Hey guys, wanted to hop on here and talk about some thoughts I had about the last 2 days. Um, I have a couple of tabs here to help us navigate that, um, but it's all about kind of a central idea that will be discussed here in this first post. Um, and that central idea is really just, the blatant slaps in the face this administration is committing against its constituents, um, in the face of, you know, the serious crimes going on right now. Uh, so yesterday, March 2nd, was the was another one of those like international calls for protest. Um, so I attended one that was hosted by a handful of organizations here in Raleigh. So just to put them on in case y'all are motivated to do some networking, Refund Raleigh, the PSL, Muslims for Social Justice, and the NC Green Party. I saw all of them out there. There were quite a few more involved, but those were like the big names. Um, and yeah, the Answer Coalition, which is Act Now to um, End War or Stop War and End Racism, I believe. And so that's a really cool resource too. That's actually how I found out about it in the first place. Um, Anywho, so while I was there at that demonstration, there's a lot of different chants that go on, but one that has particularly been on my mind that really drives the point home for like how far off the rails this is and how much we need to hold those making the executive decisions leading to these material outcomes criminally responsible. Uh, some of the chants were quite literally just revolving around providing or allowing um, suffering people who are just like us to be able to access food and water. So I don't know. It just seems insane to me that here in the core of the nation that is making those executive decisions, the constituents are having to advocate that people have food and water, and yet our government continues to double down, which is what I saw in this post here. Just one day later, this post reads, a U.S. official familiar with top Biden aides' thinking tells me they expected scenarios like the Flower Massacre, which, by the way, if you're not familiar with that, please do check it out. But no, Biden is, quote, not budging on pushing Israel in a real way despite Gaza's needs. The result, quote, hard to do and low yield PR stunts like airdrops and portable port idea, end quote. Uh, there's plenty of analysis about why the airdrops and stuff are um, inadequate at best. So I'll spare y'all from that, but would encourage you to check it out. What I really want to talk about is here on this next slide. This person's worked in government through Republican and Democrat administrations. They argue Biden is, quote, micromanaging uniquely, and U.S. policy is shaped by a singular combination of unhelpful views plus incompetence. I wonder what's incentivizing that. Quote, pussy, sorry, quote, pushing Israel to allow food in is totally off the table, end quote, despite broad U.S. government frustration. That last little bit kind of reminds me of those memes where it's like the drone strike. It's like the next one will be sent by women, or um, you know, they're saying that the people or that the people in charge are becoming increasingly frustrated. I've been seeing iterations of that meme kind of floating around. I think I had it open right over here. Yeah, this one. They had edited it to say really makes you feel like they're increasingly frustrated since they love using that term, the frustration. But yeah, this sentence really got to me here that just the idea of allowing food in is totally off the table when we had multiple thousands of people around the globe, I think in 115 cities, um, demonstrating not only, at the bare minimum for there to be food for starving people and children, uh, just seeing this the very next day. I don't know. I feel like it should be talked about. So I'm going to use my tiny little platform here to do that. I really hope that everyone I know uh, is motivated in some capacity to materially aid in holding those at the reins of these institutions that created this as a material outcome accountable. Because again, like this specific issue uh, might not affect all of us. Some of us can, carry on and not be impacted. But the same institutions that are at the reins here causing this huge amount of human suffering, um, they're the same institutions that are going to be, navigating the climate crisis, that have navigated COVID and were very happy to show us how little they valued our lives, right? They do that already, Cancer Alley, Camp Lejeune. There's plenty of examples of our ruling class subjecting us to conditions that harm us because that's what's better for capital, right? And we'll touch on that a little more going through here. So, yeah. This one was just talking about the just the insane amounts of propaganda and whatnot going on. I won't read it, but it's worth reading, I think. Um, anyway, this was another one that I saw today. Again, after seeing people clamoring for food and water at a demonstration, we're talking about stuff like this, right? It's rather poignant analysis, I think. Right. Keep carrying on. Here's another just slap in the face, right? The end of funding to the UNRWA by a lot of Western leaders who I believe, contribute quite a bit. Um, cut and dry right here. It's like, what what is this besides a slap in the face, right? Because that's impacting people, not just their suffering currently, but like, people that have been displaced already in the past, right? And like, it's just a lot of layers here that um, result in suffering in extreme capacities, as we're seeing here. Uh, that are, again, it's needless. It's for dollars and control of geopolitical interests. There's no good reason to starve a child to death in our current day, yet our administration is doubling down on it in front of our faces, even though we are, organizing in the thousands across hundreds of cities, or at least 800 cities. Um, here's another example of how it affects us at home. Oh, let me actually read that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, here's some more stuff about the media, rather recent things. Yeah, show quite significant stuff just in regard to that, talking about U.S. intervention and versus Chinese. Here, I don't know if y'all have ever bothered to check out the Wikipedia page for United States involvement in regime change, but it's pretty long. Whereas, you compare that to China's, that's it. Like, sure, they're still doing stuff, but is it to the degree where it's fostering multiple genocides, just for the pursuit of profit, just to uphold, fascist authoritarians all throughout Latin America and Asia? Not sure if that's justified. um, Also on March 2nd, just a few hours before, there was this demonstration, part of the Poor People's Campaign, which, again, humbly, I would really like to invite everyone that knows me to spend an afternoon learning about the Poor People's Campaign if they're not familiar, and MLK's work on that. It's extremely significant, um, as we're moving forward, you know, just from the lens of economic justice, but when you really start digging into it and how that relates to the climate or health outcomes or pretty much anything that affects the trajectory of a human's life, um, it's, pretty significant. And also what Dr. King was working on right before his assassination. So I think it's kind of important we know about that. Anyway, so let's investigate what exactly are they marching for here, right? Mass poor peoples and low-wage workers, State House Assembly, and March on Raleigh. They are calling everyone who believes in living wages, health care, voting rights, stopping voter suppression, equal rights for all, worker labor rights, environmental justice, access to housing, public education, abolishing poverty, right? Unity of love, not division of hate. And instead of doing any of those things, instead of putting material effort or resources toward anything that would be, remotely improving the lives of the constituents that this administration is supposedly beholden to, they're here doubling down on starving people that are more like us than we are like our rulers, right? Again, it's just, I feel like it's a significant thing to note. 140 million strong, right? Um, Pivoting a bit, but still an egregious slap in the face. The CDC lowering COVID isolation to 5 days already was bad, and then they, again, they lowered it to one. The scientific consensus was saying it's contagious beyond 10 days, right? It's a slap in the face. There's no good reason to people have to be subjected to working environments where you can risk permanent damage to your organs from contracting something, right? Why would they incentivize that as an outcome unless they're completely beholden to people who find that as a better outcome, right? Which is capital. They're not doing it. Again, they're neglecting all of these things in favor of doing things like this. It's a slap in the face, full stop. Um, I think there was another little COVID bit, yeah. Just putting it very succinctly right there. They only care about the money our labor provides. I don't know if y'all have seen this. I don't have it ready to go, but there was a recording somewhere. A gentleman in the news was referring to workers during COVID. Like this was right on the cusp of the lockdowns. Um, and he was saying we have to like essentially the term he used was human cattle stock. Right? They're looking at us like numbers, not people who are going to have to live our lives with the permanent problems. For example, my sister, right? Anyone immunocompromised, I believe the figure for immunocompromised people is like 12 million in this country. So all those people are now subject to a government that is perfectly fine sacrificing them as long as it's good for capital. Again, an incredible parallel to Palestine and to the environmental issues, to all the stuff that we've done um, in the global south, namely Latin America and Asia, and Africa too. Can't forget. Um, yeah, here's a quote from this article. Some health advocates also slammed Friday's announcement as a move catering to big business that goes against medical science. Like right there, cut and dry. What kind of an administration do we have that's intent on going against medical science in our faces? Surely then they won't go against climate science or any of this stuff, the science behind all that, right? You know, a great point right here. Oh, 17 million immunocompromised American. Yeah, so that's pretty bad, I'd say. Here we just have another little bit of investigation on how essentially collusion amongst those with consolidated wealth is screwing us in yet another way, which we'll talk about more as we move forward. Here we have, I believe this was just today in Alabama. We have Kamala Harris calling for a ceasefire, but not a permanent one. Again, it's like the Malcolm X quote about, you put a knife in my back 9 inches and then pull it out six. The knife's still there, right? It's like, yeah, we'll call for a ceasefire, but not a permanent one. You can resume your genocide later on, right? Ridiculous. um, Here's another one, another slap in the face. How we can't exactly rely on our gerontocracy to protect us in regards to advances in technology, right? Because again, we are at the mercy effectively of those with executive decision making control when it comes to replacing our jobs. We need only look to history, right? The 40-hour work week was established in 1940, yet we're still at that same standard. Um, Despite all the advances in automation over time. In fact, here's one of my favorite articles to bring up. We have the tools and technology to work less and live better. Definitely check that out. But, we could be working as short as like 10-hour weeks, 15-hour weeks, if the advances in automation actually benefited us as workers and not just those at the reins who are making these executive decisions, to only have power, or to only have the benefits of automation funneled upward right to them, right? It's exactly the same phenomenon here with this AI stuff, except much, much worse because of the quickness that it's happening and the expediency, and then also coupled with our Congress is a bunch of old bastards. So they're not really, apt to legislate on things like this. For example, we could just as easily have policy that states it's illegal to lay off people for, in this scenario. We could be getting paid more to work less. In fact, that's what we need to be doing to address the climate, right? We need to be working less. Instead, we're working the same, we're getting exploited worse, and our money is worth less because of the nature of this mode of organizing society. and its inability to handle stress, both internal and external, like with coronavirus, right? That's kind of, you may have noticed some increases in prices since coronavirus. Talking about that, now we'll switch gears again. We have paid $15 billion in just 1 year attributed to climate disaster, right? So again, those at the reins are making the executive decisions to um, essentially subject us to disaster and then make us pay for it while they're laughing all the way to the bank. A slap in the face if I've ever seen one, right? And we have to think about the trajectory of our future, right? Those are only going to get worse. It's basically woven in at this point. We're in a season of mitigation more than actually, really solving it at this current state. We need to be doing damage control so that vulnerable people aren't sacrificed for, the essentially just greed of a handful of individuals, which again, parallel right here. um, yeah, we're talking about this here. This is just some more news from 2 days ago. I wanted to read this bit here because it really ties it all together. The move comes in response to pleas from environmental justice groups, which said the rule was not protective enough for disadvantaged communities that have breathed unhealthy air for decades. Communities of color and low income neighborhoods are disproportionately located near gas plant smokestacks and other sources of industrial pollution. So there we have it. They're viewing these areas as sacrifice zones for profit. They're viewing areas that will be impacted by climate disasters, like my home in Acapulco, like that literally killed my neighbors and, destroyed all my shit. They're signing us up for that, right? They're doubling down. Again, we have to judge a system by the results it's producing, right? And how it adjusts trajectory based on those results. Pardon. So yeah, when we see them doubling down on not even allowing food, doing all this, we really gotta. This was my next thing I wanted to talk about, just the concept of necropolitics, a socio-political theory of the use of social and political power to dictate how some people may live and how some must die, right? There's a whole lot of stuff about this, but again, it's something very vital we need to all be looking into as we're moving forward. So I figured I would mention the term because it doesn't get brought up too much in the mainstream, at least from what I can tell, because it's not really a pleasant topic, and again, it implicates the rich. That's not good for capital. But yeah, definitely something to look into. Um, Here we've got some bangers from Jason Hickel, which, by the way, check out his work. He does not miss. Really good stuff. Again, just a little before, just a little comparison we might want to draw here between these two um, little infographics. Yeah, again, fair points. Global North, responsible for 92% of emissions in excess of the planetary boundary, right? And the consequences harm the South disproportionately. Again, they are gleefully creating sacrifice zones among the global South. Climate breakdown is colonial in character and requires anti colonial struggle in response. Doesn't miss. I'm telling you, check out his work. All right. See, and again, this just cut and dry how it's a policy, how it's just simple policy. A Green New Deal with public spending, public ownership of green energy. Very good. Or we could have policy that gives billions to subsidize for-profit companies, and we hope that their motives will align with saving the planet. And again, we don't just have to hope; we can materially analyze that, and I will here in this article. um, right? Yeah, again, a great material example. This page is also really good. They don't miss. They have some really nice stuff. Um, yeah, right here. Here's our state. 2012. This is, a long-standing issue. Scientific study predicted a 39-inch rise in sea level along the NC coast over the next century. In response, our lovely lawmakers passed a law banning the use of scientific predictions of sea level rise when considering new developments. Cut and dry right there. you know, and here's another one. How it really illustrates how class incentives are so weird, right? Like, we would think as regular working people that abundant and sometimes even, energy that pays for itself goes into negative pricing because there's so much of it would be great, right? That's like utopia level shit. And here we go. They've declared the problem is that solar panels generate lots of electricity in the middle of sunny days, frequently more than what's required, which drives down prices. Right? Good grief. Um, this one is a gentleman who I've been checking out recently. I would just like to shout him out. It's pretty cool stuff. He's talking about the same article I'm going through. So if you want to see better analysis, probably go check out his stuff. But it's kind of in line with what I was just talking about there, where, here's an opinion piece just a few days ago. We are taking a devastating risk with the green energy sector that could cost us our future. When we rely on private companies to solve the climate crisis, that means that they're, the planet's fate, and more so, the fate of billions of people in the global south who were not involved in the executive decision making processes that led to the climate crisis. Yeah, here it is. We're gonna let that rest in the hands of the people who were responsible. Nice. And we can see right here how that's bad, actually. Um, this was a pretty recent piece, I think, also. We can see how, climate action among, those with consolidated wealth has been, increasing. People, that's, yeah. But support for the environment and social resolutions has waned amongst those very same institutional forces, right? So even though they're talking about it more, the actual trajectory for real action not looking too great here. And when we use our noodle for just a few minutes, we might consider that maybe degrowth and things that actually will solve the climate crisis threaten capital, and that's why. So why would we trust the people who are hell bent on maintaining a status quo that revolves around, capital to solve this problem? It's like it's absolutely goofy. Again, allowing the status quo to continue as it is basically, giving them the reins to double down on letting our communities become sacrifice zones. And again, I feel quite motivated to talk to y'all today about this because, I don't want that to happen. I don't know. Do you? Do you want to get slammed by a category 5 hurricane because the ocean happens to be so warm? Which, by the way, we're getting to that. So it's just more stuff about oil and gas. Really cool little infographic from the Sunrise Movement. More really cool guys who don't miss. Check them out. Um, Here are some fun graphs. Here they're talking about in Hawaii how, the ecology is failing. They're not seeing bees, they're not seeing frogs in years. Avocado trees are being fried. It's like the apocalypse, right? They're talking about that. Um, and again, this was just days ago this was posted. This one, actually, I'll do another little shout out. This is by Sam Karana, who hangs out. He does this Arctic news blog, really cool stuff, and he makes these little graphs, really neat. Anyway, you can see how vastly different this curve is. And again, like it's not just that we are going to be subject to climate change, like it already has. Like this is vastly different from what's usual. right? These little dotted lines, I believe, are the usual standard deviations. I forget by what, but you know, that's it's looking a little different. And then that's the surface air temperature in the tropics, which I'm reminding you, I mean, that's where I live with my wife and all of my neighbors and half of my family now. Uh, Here we got the daily surface temperature of the oceans around the world. And again, same thing. This is like an entirely new curve. It is not like it's not that's not normal the way it just shoots right up. And it was already doing that at the end of last year too, right? Like we are already in a new climate. It's already changed. We should be putting our time on earth and resources to holding the criminals responsible for this accountable, right? Like again, 50 at least 50 of my neighbors are dead in Acapulco because of this. My wife had to see dead bodies in the street because the hurricane's winds were so strong that it was sucking people out of their homes, right? And again, people that were not involved, innocent people, they were just living their lives. To me, that's criminal that this has been allowed to continue. But, in the very same way as what's going on in Palestine. It's the same institutions at the reins, right? It's criminal that it's being allowed to continue. Um, and yeah, we're just gonna wrap up here. This is the last little thing I wanted to mention. It's this post from Woke Scientist, another really cool um, doctor who goes into a lot of neat stuff. But I just wanted to read this to y'all. Again, like just a human to human thing. uh, I don't want more people to simply show up to protests. Oh, before we go into that, throwing in a gentle criticism. Yeah, this person points out this is kind of reductionist on why people might not be going to this. If again, there's good reasons for not, right? Like we're hustling out here. We're trying to live, right? So it's very difficult to then also fight the most powerful institution in history, which is the US government and the ownership class that it's beholden to. So that's totally fair. I'm not trying to be preachy here. I just want to really just, rile up some sentiments that, we can and should fight these institutions that are creating these outcomes because all of our communities are subject to them in some shape or fashion, right? All of our communities, all of us know people who could be subject to these things just in the blink of an eye, right? Poverty can come out of nowhere, right? Health problems can come out of nowhere. Things that can really upset your nervous system can come out of nowhere. And then you know you're abandoned effectively to slip through the cracks, and that's wrong, right? That's criminal. The only reason that's being done is because it's at the behest of capital, right? It's a policy choice. All of these things. Anyway, though, so that being said, let's read it. So I don't want more people to simply show up to protests and one-off actions or events for Palestine. I want you to see the devastation, be inspired by the resistance who are devoting their lives to taking direct action, and be driven to dedicate your whole life to the struggle for collective liberation wherever you are. Pull on your end of the thread. This isn't about showing up to an event only to return to your personal life, defined by the priorities of the empire. Let this transform you, your relationships, and your priorities. Take action and real tangible steps to dismantle your individualism, kill your ego and purely self-centered goals, wants, aspirations that are about the individual pursuit of success, status, or power. Make way for collectivism with collectivist hopes, dreams, and aspirations for liberation. Which, by the way, that was 90% of human history doing collectivism. How I was talking about Aeon a moment ago. They have a very neat. Oh, and here it is. They have a very neat article um, about that as well. Anyway, and the only way to do this is in reciprocal relationships, i.e., mutual aid, in community, by practicing vulnerability and intimacy and resilience. That's how we build collective power. There are people who are being decimated by colonial and capitalist systems in your local context. People who are starving, unhoused, displaced, brutalized by state violence, and that's horrific. Those are atrocities just like the genocidal occupation of Palestine is an atrocity. I don't just want you to like, comment, post, share things about Palestine. I want you to be moved to take action, build meaningful, liberating relationships. Sorry. um, Resilient community webs that will allow you to collectively work toward building a world where people have the right to live with dignity. No one has the right to live under capitalism, colonialism, including the land and our planet as a whole, right? Just like how they were mentioning about Hawaii, about how ecology is being sacrificed, right? Just like um, you know, everything else. Like ecology can't even advocate for itself. It is the one thing that is purely innocent, right? It is completely beholden to our decisions. And and again, those at the reins have decided it's okay to sacrifice it. And, again, to the point where our lives are being adjust, pardon me, where they're being, impacted at best or ended at worst, like my neighbors in Acapulco. Yeah. We humans and every inch of our ecosystems are exploited for profit. Palestine is connected to every single injustice that you can imagine because they are all connected. We owe it to each other to divest from these systems and play our roles in destroying them. Remember, capitalism is reformed modern day colonialism, and it makes oppression, poverty, inequality, and genocide necessary and profitable. This is how these systems operate. There is no way to reform them. That's something that I think we really need to come to terms with these days. A lot of people are still hung up on thinking that that's the way out, right? when when we study and scrutinize material reality and what avenues we have to get out of this or mitigate human suffering and destruction of our environment, we got to face reality. We can't just expect reform. Our liberations are not metaphorically tied, but they are literally deeply interconnected. Your well being and health are contingent on the health of all our communities. So devote yourself to the struggle for liberation, to abolition of these systems, to building community care. Let Palestine free you. Simply confirming, assimilating, complying, and obeying these brutal capitalist and colonial systems will not save you. Dedicate your being to collective liberation because that struggle, that process is the only thing that will save us. We will save us. So, I, yeah, hit the nail on the head. Um, if you watch this whole thing, thanks. I appreciate you. And if you'd like to network with me or any of these orgs, I'd be glad to do so. Thanks again, and y'all take care. Goodbye.